agree, Chair.
Okay, lovely. Please be advised that this meeting will be recorded and data collected during the recording of this meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Please can I ask all in attendance to mute their microphones, announce their names before speaking, and I remind members that the use of the instant messaging facility is for advising if a member wishes to speak or draw urgent attention, not to hold a conversation or put forward a point of view. For the benefit of any members of the public who have dialed in by phone, please note that the instant messenger chat facility that may be referred to during the meeting is to facilitate the chairman and democratic services so that members can indicate they wish to speak. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group meeting. I'd like to advise that the following staff are in attendance: the Interim Head of Planning Services, Flo Churchill, the Planning Policy Manager, Jill Peat, and Democratic Services, Kelly McKenzie. There may well be other members of the planning policy team in attendance as well. Item 1 is the emergency evacuation procedure, but as we are now having this in a Teams format, I hope you all know the way out of your own houses. Item 2, apologies for absence and confirmation of substitutes.
Thank you, Chair. Apology received from Councillor Peter Marchington. His substitute is Councillor Mike Whiting. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Go back to my other page again. Okay, there is item 3 is the minutes. I've got some concern about this because we have made clear in the past that we don't take minutes of these meetings as they're not committees. We take notes, and there are a number of meetings where we've had since the date on these minutes, which we're not signing off. So I'm a bit concerned at the status of the attendance of the website list of meetings. There have been meetings that aren't included, so I'm going to ask that we put this back to the next meeting so that we can actually have a proper set of notes agreed by the working group, because it's giving a very false impression at the moment. The minutes that we would be talking about are of 6th of July. I don't think they're either minutes or the last meeting of this working group. Does anybody have any issues with that? Right, I see no hands. Monique, Councillor Bonney.
I was going to say I don't have a problem with that, but I did put my hand up to say that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bonney. So if that's okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I see no hands. So the item 5 is the local plan review update and next steps. This is a report that you've got on your agenda and outlines the proposed way forward for this council to recommend to Policy and Resources Committee that the published LDS is suspended and Regulation 19 consultation paused until the Levelling Up Regeneration Bill gains royal. Hello, Mr. Heffer. Jill, no, Flo, over to you. I've got that right. No, sorry, it's Jill.
Thanks.
Larissa,
thanks.
sorry, before you continue, Larissa, you've put your hand up.
Sorry, Chair, that was an inadvertent hand pushing up.
That was an inadvertent hand, right? That's different from a legacy hand. Back to Jill.
Thanks, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. As you'll be aware, the Council has a published Local Development Scheme, or LDS, and what that does is it sets out when the Council is undertaking the various stages of local plan preparation. Regulation 19 consultation, that's the pre-submission draft, that was due to take place over the coming months. The report before you sets out a recommendation to delay the local plan review timetable so that any formal consultation takes place when we have greater certainty about the government's direction of travel. Detailed work on the local plan review will of course continue, with a view to being able to undertake Regulation 19 consultation under the transitional arrangements once the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill has gained royal assent. This is likely to mean a delay of around 12 to 18 months. There have been significant changes at national level. We're now on our third planning minister for this year. The promise of a new planning system was mooted back in August 2020 with the publication of the planning white paper, and then an alternative approach was presented, with this being achieved through changes to existing regulation, policy and guidance. A prospectus of proposed changes promised in July has not been forthcoming, and just this week the new Housing Minister, Lee Rowley, has said that the Prime Minister is committed to scrapping the government's 300,000 homes a year national target. Delaying the Reg 19 consultation allows time for policy at the national level to settle down, so avoiding abortive work, and it allows for consideration of longer consultation timeframes, something some of our town and parish councils are keen for us to do. I want to be very clear, the commitment to producing a local plan review remains. This is not a stop, this is a pause or a slowdown, and this is for the reasons set out in the report. Undoubtedly, it's far from ideal to delay having an up-to-date local plan, but we have to weigh this up against other risks, including potentially progressing with a plan that's not sound or cannot deliver the right development for the borough. An out-of-date plan risks speculative applications for development, but as a council, we're already there. Speculative development proposals still have to meet the objectives of delivering sustainable development, and they still have to comply with policies in the adopted local plan bearing fruits, where those policies and proposals are compliant with national policy set out in the NPPF. Officers will continue to work on the evidence base, making sure it's up to date and proportionate to support a sound plan. Work is already underway to assess the policies and proposals of the adopted local plan for compliance with the NPPF. This is something that will support the caseload of our development management colleagues, because it will help to ascertain the amount of weight to be given to the policies in bearing fruit on a case-by-case basis. Work on refining emergent policies and proposals will also be ongoing, because this will help us to secure delivery of sustainable growth, along with wider health and wellbeing benefits, and responding to mitigating the impacts of climate change, as well as securing the required new infrastructure. As officers, we will continue to keep a close eye on the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, nicknamed the LURB, and other national policy changes, including new responsibilities forthcoming from the Environment Act. And we will continue to do this so that when the time comes, a revised LDS, or whatever the equivalent to that may be, can be prepared, and we can progress at pace with formal consultation, and then submission of the local plan review can take place. The proposal is for the Regulation 19 to be delayed and for this to be reflected on the Council's web pages for the LDS. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. So the recommendation is to recommend to the P&R Policy and Resources Committee that the published LDS is suspended and Regulation 19 consultation paused until the Levelling Up Regeneration Bill gains assent. Any questions? Councillor Whiting.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thanks, Jill, for that summary. I've got three very quick questions, if I may, Chairman. Firstly, are other councils doing what we're proposing to do, i.e., delay their local plans in this way, and for the same reason?
I'll take your question. Sorry, Councillor. I'll take the questions one at a time. So
okay, fine.
Make sure everything's answered.
Thank you.
Yes, I think at the last count there's about 35 in that position that are doing so. I don't know if Flo can confirm what the latest figure is, if it's higher than 35 now. Flo?
Yes, certainly. I mean, there are 19 councils that have officially declared either pauses or withdrawing their local plan, including Medway, close to us. The other councils that are pausing or withdrawing are Castle Point, Havant, Hartsmere, Arran, Basildon, Bournemouth, Dacorum, Dorset, East Hampshire, Epping Forest, Medway, Mid Sussex, St Albans, Sheffield City, Slough, Stockport, Thanet, Three Rivers, Wealdon, Ashfield and Welland and Hatfield, for a variety of reasons. The most commonly quoted one is uncertainty over government policy direction going forward. A couple of councils have paused because Slough, for instance, had their local plan budget withdrawn, so they don't have the resources to go forward. So we are not alone in proposing what we are proposing.
Councillor Whiting?
Yeah, thank you very much, Flo, and thank you, Chairman. Yeah, secondly, if we approve this delay this evening, is the risk from, and you touched on, Jill touched on this, but I just want to be clear, is the risk from speculative development and applications greater, say, tomorrow morning than it was this morning?
Remember, we're only recommending that Policy and Resources adopt this position, so we're not actually making a decision. It's just a suggest. We're recommending either to P&R that they do or they don't suspend. So it's when Policy and Resources make a decision that any change would result in potential responses to it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm grateful for the clarification. It's the wording was such that it sort of became a little bit easier to understand. Does this decision, if we go down this route at the end of the day, make a difference from our point of view, put us at greater risk or less risk from speculative applications?
Flo, if Policy and if we clear this tonight, maybe we won't have to clear it, discuss it again at P&R. But if we recommend to P&R and P&R do adopt this position, what would be the position with regards to the question that Councillor Whiting put? Thank
you, Chair. Putting it brutally, we're in no different a position tomorrow morning to the position we are today. Okay. We don't have an up-to-date local plan, and we don't currently have a 5-year housing land supply. So in terms of speculative development, it wouldn't make any difference. It's not the only factor, and particularly when it comes to appeals, we've just received late on this afternoon an appeal decision on Elms Lane, where the inspector made some very helpful comments about the tilted balance and so on, and when it applies and when it doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Whiting, I'll call you back in a minute. Just to confirm for anybody listening, but that appeal was dismissed. The Elm Lane appeal has been dismissed. So I know there might be a few people waiting for that. Councillor Whiting.
No, thank you, Chairman. That's it. I'll leave it there. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. I think the report makes quite good reading, quite a lot of common sense. And as Flo said, as highlighted, there are quite a number of councils up and down the country because of what the government seems to be U-turning yet again. But my worry is we have no clear direction of what the government's going to do And even when they do give a direction of what they're going to do, they don't stick to it for another week. So it could be a long time that we're out it. But to answer sort of Councillor Mike Whiting's question, we haven't had a 5-year housing supply since February 2019. So the tilted balance has always been in play, and each case would stand and fall on its own merits. I could see this being quite a long, protracted thing, because I don't think the government really know which direction it's taking, and is spinning round in circles at the moment, and that's going to affect a lot of local authority, not just through planning, but on other decisions that no one knows what they're going to do, and if it's going to stay a decision for long before it's rescinded. Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to add in a bit of further information in regard to question about other councils, putting it into the context of Kent. There are several other councils that are in a similar position with us without a local plan. Canterbury's was adopted in July 2017, the same as us. They've only got an LHN of 800, and they're only on a Reg 18 consultation at the moment. Dover hasn't had a local plan since 2010. They are currently in a Reg 19 consultation. Their previous housing target was 700. That has dropped to 611. Folkestone and Hythe haven't had a plan in date since 2013. Gravesham's last local plan was 2014. They did a Reg 18 consultation in 2020 and haven't progressed. Maidstone is in examination stage at the moment. Medway haven't had a local plan since 2003, we think, and they're now looking at doing a Regulation 18 consultation in the summer of next year, having pulled their previous Reg 19. Thanet, they were planning 2020. Tunbridge and Malling at last adopted a local plan in 2007. They have a Reg 19 running at the moment. So there are around the county a whole series of councils without up-to-date local plans. It is the majority. I think Monique was next. Oh, else Monique put her hand down. Right. Well, who's M? Mike Henderson, Councillor Henderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Broadly speaking, I can't say this report enthuses me, but it is at least a reasonable approach. I see no point in going all the way through a report and then at some point in the future having the government decide something quite different. But I do have a query on, excuse me, page 5, paragraph 2.4, about halfway down. I'm slightly confused by the comments on Sittingbourne. You talk about allocations in and around Sittingbourne, and I Wade, North East Sittingbourne, South West Sittingbourne, and say, while there are a significant number of dwellings in the pipe in this general location, doesn't say they're approved or just being considered, additional allocations to the west of Sittingbourne is likely to overheat the market, and I don't see the relevance of that point. Impact viability and subsequently impact delivery. And I don't understand what is meant by that. I don't see the relevance of the comments in terms of what we're trying to decide. I wonder if somebody could explain for me.
Jill, can you clarify the inclusion and relevance of of paragraph 2.4 regarding the rest of the borough?
Yes, thanks for the question. It's really highlighting the difficulties around trying to meet the LHN, the standard method figure, and about how the expectation is that we will meet that figure regardless of where that is outside of land subject to high level constraints. But then off the back of that, we have to have confidence that these sites will come forward. So the difficulty that we've got is that with the information and the evidence that we have available to us, we can't categorically demonstrate that we can't meet our local housing need, but we can't demonstrate that we can meet it either. And this is something that we need to continue to do. And in light of uncertainty around how development is framed, that's just giving some context. So I'm sorry if it was confusing.
When you do go on at 2.6 to discuss the problems we face at the east of the borough, and Faversham and Vrenley Corner as well.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Bonney.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think it's always disappointing when you start a process, you think you're gonna, always roll forwards. But I think this just really highlights the complete pickle that government have put all the local authorities in. I mean, it's not just us. I think our surrounding neighbours in Kent, but also further afield, are finding themselves in a complete mess here. I think it would be mad to continue without taking a pause and understanding what we're going to end up with. These are supposed to be, at the end of the day, long-term plans, and there's always this review period at year 5. But I think until the government gets its act together and gets it straight, we can't continue in this vein. So I think the report is the best option available to us, quite frankly. Disappointing as it though it is.
Okay, Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's the worst possible place that we can be in. I do completely agree with everything that is in the report, and I think it's the only option that we have got to take at this stage. We have heard about the government, lots of changes, and I completely 100% agree with that. I know that civil servants at Duluck don't even know what's happening, so if they're not knowing what's happening up there, there's no chance that we're going to be knowing what's happening. But what I do think is that saying about government and the changes completely right, but there's also a lot more in this, and it is within the report that there's difficulties with us taking this forward, and none of this is a surprise. I sat in the meeting a year ago, last October, saying that there was changes to the NPPF. We should be pausing, just taking a step back and waiting to see what's going to be happening. When we started looking at the LURB and it was said in May, I said then we should be stopping, seeing what is going to be happening. And every step of the way, I was told I was just trying to delay the local plan, and for various reasons. And now we're at the stage of exactly what I've been saying for 3 years, or more like, is now what is being said. And I completely agree with everything we've got in here about Vrenley Corner. That has been said before. Until we get the evidence that we need to be able to progress to a Regulation 19, which we haven't had up until now, even though it has been being pushed, we shouldn't be going any further. And the changes that are going on at government at the moment shouldn't really be making a difference, because we should be in a position that we can carry on going forward with a strong plan with just making changes when needed, when the LERB goes through. So it is a difficult position. I completely agree with everything that's been said, and think we should be saying to PNR to take this action.
Okay, thank you.
One concern, just a question I have got, and this is on the 5-year supply. When we have had 5-year HLS statements previously, some of those allocations have been used from the local plan review and brought into the calculations. Now we're saying that we're not going to be progressing with it. What impacts does that have on the 5-year supply? Because I think there will be a lot of arguments coming forward, and it's going to be interesting to see what's said at appeals when we're not progressing a plan, and how those allocations that have been used in the calculations are actually taken or not.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hunt. Can you just clarify what you're saying here? Because you say that you've been saying we should pause for a couple of years. And you're also saying that we are in the worst possible position. How would you have liked us to have progressed if you thought we should pause? What sort of forms of progression would you like to see the council take?
What I've said in the past is that we need to get all the evidence, which the major one that we have had is the traffic implications and highways. And we need to be having that there so that we know what housing numbers we can take. And it is basically exactly what's being said in the report tonight. I have said it in the past. We didn't have the evidence to go forward with it. We still haven't got that evidence, and now we've got changes with government, and that all needs to be worked up and put into a proper proposal going forward. You're saying in there that nobody is coming up with an idea of what can do. The residents don't want it. Well, that's a no-brainer. Anybody that you say is going to want development near you is going to say no. And I think we need to take the tough decisions as councillors and take something forward that is strong and something that is going to be accepted by an inspector. And we haven't done that. And that's why I have said that we need to stop, not pause it for 2 years, but we need to be pausing it, making sure that we've got the right evidence to go forward with a strong plan, and we haven't done that.
Well, officers have been getting evidence for the last, well, constantly getting evidence, and one of the main sources of evidence was with statutory responses to the Regulation 19. And we'd only, and we have had this discussion at previous working group meetings, where the Regulation 19 got us responses that we wouldn't have otherwise have got, because they have to actually respond and defend that response in front of the inspector. So the earlier Reg 19 was a it was a very useful exercise in actually getting some of the evidence and the responses that we need to see exactly where we stand as a borough in terms of the housing delivery. So we have been pushing all along to get the evidence we need, to get different sorts of evidence. You don't get that evidence by pausing or staying still. You get it by going out there, putting things in the air and asking people to respond to it, because they won't respond to nothing. Jill, can you answer Councillor Hunt's final point?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll certainly try my best. I think evidence is really tricky, because some things you need first, and then you need something else, and then that has an impact on information that you already have, so you've got to revisit it. It is a constant circle. So I think the evidence, you know, we've been gathering evidence since the council meeting back in July 2017, where bearing fruits was adopted and the resolution was made to start with the review. And we will continue to look at our evidence, and that will continue to evolve right up to submission, and quite possibly actually after
Beyond.
we've submitted.
So you don't stop gathering evidence even once you've submitted a Reg 19, do you?
That is often the case. Yeah.
Was that your question answered, Councillor Hunt?
No, my actual question was about the 5-year supply and using the allocations in the local plan review to do those numbers, and what happens with that now we are saying that we're not going to progress with it.
So basically, how do we devise a 5-year supply if we haven't got a local plan? Jill, or Flo,
Yeah.
sorry, how does that work?
Oh, okay.
Whoever. Jill.
I'm ready. I can
Jill.
answer. Right. So the housing and land supply position statement is something that sits sort of outside of the local plan process, but is connected. And for the housing land supply position statement that was published this year, that's a snapshot in time. That's where we were at that point. The survey work for the next housing land supply position statement has now been done, and we're analysing that. And one of the things that we will look at is whether or not it's appropriate to use those figures, and whether or not they should, you know, it might be appropriate to do a bit of phasing, because we might have information that would give us certainty around deliverability regardless of allocations in a local plan. For example, sites that are within settlement confines. But it would be inappropriate for me to give a definitive answer at this point, because it has to be looked at in detail and reported in the next iteration of the position statement.
Councillor Hunt?
Yep, no, that completely makes sense. I think what would be good, it hasn't been happening. I haven't had many updates and meetings with officers, and I think it would be good just to sit down outside of the meeting and really sort of understand what's happening, because I've not really had any updates for quite a while now. So it'd be good to be able to ask these questions outside of the meeting and get a better understanding. Thanks.
We could perhaps have a future working group session on that, because the new figures will need. No, but is that even new figures that we'll be looking at in February, March next year, Jill?
Actually, what we're hoping to do is publish the housing land supply position statement in November, but as a draft. The reason for that is we can't finalise it until we are given our housing delivery test score from the government, and I'm afraid I have no control over when that's published. We can make a guess of what the score will be, but it's usually published in January, February time. So we'd either be looking for confirmation that the buffer would be 5% or 20%. But certainly I've made a note about running a session and having a catch up. That's no problem.
Okay,
Thanks.
lovely. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I support the officer recommendation, and the reason for that is in paragraph 1.1 and 1.3, where it states that the prospectus of proposed changes for national policy expected in July has still not been published, and we're still waiting for a date for that publication. And then in 1.3, it comments about the recent discourse from government ministers, where they've commented on housing numbers and commented on greenfield development, but still no firm government policy has come forward. So I don't see how we can progress with our local plan while government still hasn't set its own policy. We need something sound. We need a sound government policy from which we can work. So I think this pause is a good thing, and it's the way we should go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Eddie. Flo, have I missed you in a previous indication, but your hand's up.
No, it was in relation to this really. I was in contact with DLUHC fairly recently asking them what had happened to the promised prospectus to the changes in the NPPF, and they couldn't give me an answer, but they did indicate that it might have something to do with the recently announced new planning bill, of which we have no detail at the moment, or very little detail at the moment. So not only do we have a levelling up and regeneration bill coming forward, but we also now have a new planning bill to look at. And there have been statements made by various Conservative MPs at their conference this week, but of course a ministerial statement made outside the Houses of Parliament isn't binding. So whilst we've been told that the government are looking at reviewing the 300,000 homes a year target, again, we have no indication of when that's going to be.
Okay, going round again, we've got Councillor Whiting.
So thanks, Chairman, and thanks for letting me come back in again. It was just a couple of quick points. I'm picking up on what Councillor Hunt says, and I think that was very apposite. I wonder where we would be if there had been no change of government in the last 6 months. I am guessing that we still would have been asking for a pause, as Councillor Hunt has been doing for some time, or recommending to PNR that this thing is paused, because we don't have a strong enough case to go even to a Reg 19 at the moment, particularly on the traffic issues. And it seems to me that we can't come to any agreement with various highways authorities about how the thing would pan out. So I take the point about the changes in government. My view is that we would have been here anyway, regardless of that. And specifically my question about which other councils were doing this for the same reason. None of those in Kent that you mentioned are doing it for the same reason. There's a variety of reasons why they are in the position they're in. But I was grateful for the list of 19 that Jill was able to furnish me about the other councils that are doing it for the same reason, about confusion. But I go back to my original point, and one that I think Councillor Hunt made very well. But if we hadn't have had a change of government, we would have still been doing this because we weren't ready and we hadn't progressed far enough, in my view. Thank you.
Well, obviously we have got a change of government. We are where we are. So predictions about things that may or may not have happened if things have been different is for a different committee. Flo.
Apologies, that's a legacy hand. I do apologise.
Okay, Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, really just a point. I think there's another value in the pause, which is not a good thing, but the housing needs are almost bound to decline. What numbers to is another matter, because with present policies, nobody's going to be able to afford a mortgage to buy a house.
Yeah, right. The housing market is a constantly volatile and ever-moving target, which at the moment isn't looking particularly healthy. We've seen mortgage problems coming in the last week or so, and obviously there's the associated problem with inflation, building up the costs of housing delivery, along with just about everything else except wages. Councillor Jays.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a disappointing situation to be placed in. Our residents need certainty, and because of this government, we cannot deliver it. It's unfortunate we have to delay because of this government delay and dither, but I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I'd seen no other hands, so I've moved the recommendation. Would anybody like to second it?
Yeah.
Please.
I'll second it,
Right.
Councillor Palmer. Oh, go on.
Thank
Molly.
Okay.
Councillor Palmer do it.
Yeah, okay. Richard seconded. Those in favour, please indicate. But we recommend to Policy and Resources Committee that the published LDS is suspended and Regulation 19 consultation paused until the LURB gains royal assent. Those in favour, please show. I'm not going to be able to do this by hands, am I?
I agree.
I'm going to do this by person. Right. Councillor Mike Bald, I agree. Councillor Bonney,
Indeed.
Councillor Gould,
Agreed.
Councillor Henderson,
Agree.
Councillor Hunt,
Agreed.
Councillor Jackson, Councillor Jackson,
Just had trouble unmuting, so I put my hand up. Yes, I agree.
thank you. Councillor Jays,
Agreed.
Councillor Whiting,
Agreed.
Councillor Palmer,
Yes, agreed. Maybe we
Councillor-
should pose it until Boris is on leading the ship again.
Councillor Thomas,
Agreed.
and Councillor Whelan. Is Glyn here?
Don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that's been agreed unanimously. Thank you all very much, and we will get a proper notes of meetings for the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Good night,
Good night.
and thank you to the officers
Thanks,
for attending.